Good evening. I would like to call the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, December 14th at 7 p.m. And I'd like to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is delegations, where any resident is free to address any of the items on our agenda tonight. Seeing no member of the public here, I think we can move on to the approval of minutes. We have the minutes of the November 9, 2022. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. Is there any discussion or comments or corrections? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the November 9th meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Motion carries 5-0-0. Next on the agenda is reports. We have Mr. Siri, our first selectman here.
Thank you. Good evening, Kevin Siri, First Selectman, 25 Quailcrest Road, East Lyme. Start with charter revision. They've been meeting a couple times a month, and they're really moving along nicely. One thing that they haven't officially, come to any firm decisions, but some of the things they've already indicated that they're already comfortable with is if someone resigns during a term, whoever's appointed to fill that, an elected term, would fill it for the remainder of the term. So if there's 2.5 years left, it's 2.5 years. If it's 8 months left on the term, it is. So it's no longer just till the next election. It has been recommended by the Secretary of the State's office in the past and so forth like that. So so that's one of the things that they've looked at doing. They've broken into 3 subcommittees, and the first meeting they have of the month is a full meeting to discuss things. The second meeting is subcommittee. So the next one next week will be subcommittee. So it's moving along nicely. A lot of really good people on that. Regarding Main Street, we all heard about the cinemas. George Mitchell's taking lots of phone calls from people about interest and so forth like that. The Yale Charette group and Main Street organization are working with him too, are talking about it, and they're going to be holding some discussions on what might be able to be done with that too. And because Yale and they had indicated they'd like to look at some other uses maybe for the Dominion building, so instead of reverting it, giving it back to Dominion, who would put it up in their commercial real estate and sell it. They've said they'll gladly give us a pause for several months to see if we'd like to consider going back at it again and take possession of it. If we did it has to come through the Board of Selectmen, but then come to the Board of Finance, because you'd have to indicate what's the impact on the tax rolls. Well, right now it would be none, and then it would have to go to the Planning Commission to make sure it's taking that would be okay with POCD's guidance and so forth like that. And then if we want to dispose of it, we do the whole thing all over again. But so we're just going to see what Yale and Main Street come up with some ideas as far as what maybe to do to repurpose that property. Moving on, Amtrak fence. I just heard from Jane Brophy, because they were supposed to do that fencing in Groton. That has been pushed off until at least next year. And right now they're not sure if next year will be when our fence gets done. But here again, before any decisions are made, they said they will reach out to us. She said she's planning on having a face-to-face with me and her and another representative of Amtrak probably early next spring. Just found out today too, between 23 and 25, there's a new program where the state will fully fund 100% of the cost of replacing bridges in need. Fairhaven Road is the one that has the barrels on it and so forth like that. Not desperate. It needs to be replaced. This new program, the state will pay 100% of the cost of doing it, and the only thing is we have to pay for it up front first for just the construction. All the work is done by the state. The thing is, by doing this, the state gets to pick the ultimate design, but with input from the town. So we're going to be moving forward with that. I haven't even briefed the Board of Selectmen on that yet because it was just a meeting today. But they would not only do the bridge on Fairhaven, they would also the lead into it as well. They would just say, okay, we're going to do the bridge. Everything on either side of it is up to you. They want to do a complete project. So it's a couple areas where it's done before, and we get to have some input as to the type of material used and the type of rails put up and so forth. You saw in the paper where we've established a relationship with Waterford with the Shoreline Traffic Accident Reconstruction Team. This will help share resources for serious accidents, and it's possibly some other towns you saw in the article may join it as time goes on too. It's a great resource because reconstruction equipment is expensive, and this way you'll have one team to respond to serious events as well. And not only is that, financially it makes a lot of sense, and the expertise, you have a much bigger pool as far as drawing on the resources. Also, too, Southeastern Connecticut Council of Government, I'll just cover the areas that would be of interest to the, here for the legislative agenda adoption that they're going to recommend to the General Assembly. I shared with the superintendent the education ones. Their recommendation is that the legislature look into and accelerate the phase-in of educational cost-sharing grant formula, increase funding of other education programs, increase funding for the special ed excess cost grant, and address the shortage of paraprofessionals by developing and funding and enhanced pathways to increase the number of certified paraeducators and increase the number of potential teacher candidates in the pipeline through mentorship of paraeducators. So that's what they've done in there. And the other area that would be of interest, create legislation that would fully fund the pilot program, the payment in lieu of taxes, because we don't get as much as the formula doesn't give us as much as we used to, and we obviously have a lot of state property in here with the women's correctional facility, and it does put a heavy strain on our emergency services because several times a week our ambulance is forced to respond there for transport of people. So those are the primary ones that would for finances too. Regarding hiring, we've hired one of the police officers. The one that could be hired half-time was hired the other last week. He'll start the academy right after the new year. Moving on to the firefighters, they've had their agility test because we have the one that we're bringing in halfway through, and we're hiring another one to fill someone who left a couple months ago. So that we'll be hiring 2 firefighters. Kathy Wilson, our senior director, after 30+ years, is retiring at the end of March. So and she's announced it to everybody now, so just it's okay to say that. And it looks like we're going to have a building official we're finally going to be hiring probably right after the first of the year. Came in, he's got the background that we're looking for. He's local, and we're excited about having him come in because Ed Scarpati's done a fantastic job as the interim, but he only wanted to be the interim, but not for much longer. So he will still stay and work on a part-time basis because it's such a great resource. You saw we've approved the Big Belly garbage cans. We're getting the purchase order for that, and right now the first 2 places will be in front of what used to be the theater and down by the Black Sheep. If we get a third in the spring, that will go by Dairy Queen because that requires 3 containers in the summertime. We had our first snowstorm. It was a nice small one, which is good because we have 4 brand new route drivers that have never plowed and sanded before. This was a good run for them to help bring them up to speed in that. And Joe Burgaud did have a meeting with not only town but the Board of Ed to make sure that more salt doesn't mean better roads. And for a little salt goes a long way to try and reduce the amount of salt we put on there. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Senator-elect Marks. She has been reaching out to meet with us. So some of the things that I'm going to bring up to her, some of the things that are pretty much there in the Council of Government, the need for some additional assistance in some areas from the state. On a happy note, the Jingle Bell Run this past Saturday, 1,306 people. It's the biggest turnout ever. It was really great. Cold, but didn't seem to bother anybody. Raised a lot of money for suicide awareness, prevention, and counseling and that. So again, thanks to members of the Brian Daigle Foundation, Paul and Ann Daigle, for what they've done. The holiday stroll was really great. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, tree lighting, it was really a great day. The merchant said it was very good. Light parade was really fantastic. It was really long, but it was a lot of fun. And for congratulations to the first time in a long time that wasn't Signcraft, but now, and it was a great float. But I know John well enough to know this will make okay. I've got to even step up my game even more. And that completes all the activities really on Main Street, and not until March when we have the O Niantic right around 5K right around St. Patrick's Day. And the last thing is we lost Waterford in the Thanksgiving game. That's all. I won't really pass that last thing.
Yeah.
So, any questions?
Anyone have anything for Mr.
Okay.
Sherry?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Next on the agenda under reports is our superintendent, Jeff Newton. I also just want to welcome the chair of the Board of Ed, who's here with us today. And I thought I would just make a couple of quick comments. You know, obviously there was an article in the newspaper, and I think anyone who's ever been interviewed can always say that sometimes our tone doesn't come across the way we'd like. And I just want to make it very clear that the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, we're all, dedicated to working together to doing what we need to solve the deficit that came up over the last couple of meetings, Board of Ed meetings, Board of Finance meetings. So we definitely appreciate a good working relationship. And I think I just also want to take this moment to reiterate some of the nuances of the budget process, and that neither the Board of Selectmen nor the Board of Finance have any say in exactly how the Board of Ed spends their funds. We do have the ability to decide how much the Board of Ed has to spend, but we can't tell them how to spend it. So I think that creates a little sort of natural tension of how much information gets shared and all of that. And so it's our job to work past that, and I think I know last year we attended a couple of budget workshops to get everyone more familiar with what goes into your budget. I know I attended one last month along with Richard and Peter. Tomorrow these guys will be attending. I can't. And hopefully all of that greater communication will help us find a solution together. So
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. That collaboration. I know we've worked very hard over the years to continue to build that up, and we all want that to continue, and I know it will. So appreciate that. Sad day in the world of education with the 10-year anniversary of Sandy Hook. We flew our flags, at half-mast, as everybody did across the state. So rough day for educators and really everyone with that tragedy. We all knew where we were 10 years ago when that happened on that tragic day. So again, sad day for education. Our work obviously has been dedicated to this deficit and working to continue to get this deficit down. We're currently at $625,000. And work feverishly continues. And that's our focus day in and day out. POs continue to be closed out, and we're looking at everything that's either an emergency or an absolute have, and anything else is scrutinized to the point of we don't need it, we're not doing it, and we're not making the purchase. Also over the holiday break, all of our buildings other than the high school, we're planning on keeping shut down. Save on electricity, save on heat, etc. And just the high school is really going to be the only one that open with sports and activities that occur with practices and so forth. It's a unique year because Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, which are both recognized as holidays, fall on the Saturday and Sunday, and then New Year's Eve and New Year's Day fall on the next Saturday and Sunday. So we put those in the middle of between the two weekends. So really, there's only one working day, which is Wednesday, in between. So we're trying to, again, consolidate everything we can as it pertains to electricity. As Mrs. Hall mentioned, the budget workshop is tomorrow evening. Great to hear that we'll have a few folks that will join us. We will be going through our preliminary reductions from where we had started out of the gate, where just everything was put in into the budget. And then we work from there after getting and obtaining and going through all of the school budgets, the department budgets, which we've now, worked down. So we'll be talking about the preliminary reductions, the cuts. We've got 18.5 positions that we are already proposing as a reduction, and those will be discussed tomorrow evening. Those are all proposed and have to be discussed, and we'll be going through those when we meet. I wanted to follow up. I appreciate Kevin sending me that, our first selectman sending me that information, especially regarding special education. We have a legislative breakfast on January 13th at Learn, so our legislators, senators, representatives hopefully will be there. I've already talked to Holly Cheeseman. She said she'd be present. And we're talking, one of the biggest pushes is, special education and fully funding. And not having partial funding for those resources for students. Those numbers continue to grow, as we know over the years, and we've always, year on end, requested for the state to fully fund special education and those costs. They haven't done it. Hopefully we'll continue to push and continue to rattle the cage. Something's got to give at some point, but we'll see when. So that's all I have for specific. Again, those are our focus areas, right now. Happy to answer any questions.
I may start off just, given my comment that we don't have the opportunity to actually tell you, how to spend the money, I think given the deficit and how the town, is going to, work with you to find that out, I would like to feel like we could get a little bit more information on a regular basis to help us understand where this is going to go over the year. So I know I had originally kind of talked about what, getting a report or some kind of update that says these are the actual steps that, we are taking and where we think that month over month, what savings will result from that. So we can see, what are you projecting over this next 6 months? All the measures that you're taking, what will that result in? Because that will, help us to continue to work to figure out where we're going with this. And I think one of the things that I look at is, well, what is the history of the number of students in the district and then the number of employees in the district over some time period, whether it's the last 5 or 10 years, because I think we have fewer students, and how does that play out over time in terms of the number of employees that are supporting that, because that's the type of thing that might say, okay, well, perhaps that's where there's some savings. When we do the budget, the normal annual process, since we're not saying this is how you should spend the money, we're mainly just saying, well, geez, the town's budget is increased about this percentage, so it sort of makes sense that the Board of Ed would go along those same lines. But I think that type of information would help us sort of see where that trajectory is going, and knowing, that special ed is a big component of those, how many special ed students are we, are in the district, and how has that changed, and the budget, that's going along with it. So I think if we could look at some of, those 4 or 5 biggest drivers of what drives your budget. We know it's, it's employee costs more than anything. But I think if we could get some sort of regular update of these are the actions we're taking, these are the areas that are of most concern, and what the backup plan is, because I think we also know that we still, we've got the $625,000 deficit now. We don't know yet what the impact will be from the cyber issue. So any update you can give us along that is also going to be helpful.
Yeah, and I think we can roll into that too, and it is, the challenging part is the rolling special education costs, which continue to go up and down based on need. We're gonna have a medically fragile student or twins move into our district next week, nursing costs, you name it. Could be a couple $100,000 that just rolled in, and a student may leave, or another one needs to be outplaced, or we're bringing one back. So, and we track all that. So,
and there's probably sort of a here's the average over based upon the number of students in the whole district and this many, that there should be some sort of general rule of thumb that you can count on, increase, decrease. It's going to come in between some. Yeah.
Yep, and with close to 400, almost 500 students identified under special education. That we've got a pretty good handle on all those numbers of prevalence rate. Happy to provide that information, so we can send that ahead of time too. We can put that in written format.
That's great. If we could get it a couple of days before the meeting, that gives all of us a chance to kind of delve into it and be ready with any questions or additional requests.
Sure.
Yeah, and along those lines with the special ed identification, if we could see comparable rates, not necessarily statewide, but between either towns in our DIRG or neighboring towns, and also if they're sending students out of district for those services, what their rates are versus what ours are, because we historically have been saying we keep our students at home and we're saving money there, but just would like to see those comparisons.
Yeah, and as I say, we have 8 of our own outplacements, and the rest are in district, where other districts are all much higher. But our prevalence rate is higher than most everybody else in the DIRG. So I have that data. I can provide that.
Oh, okay. And I don't expect you to be able to go into why our prevalence rate is higher, but it just is. And I'm not going to ask you for that. But one thing in reading that article in the paper today, it looked like the town had used a different estimate for what the increase on the insurance rates would be versus what the schools had used. And I'm wondering if maybe going forward there could be more alignment between the town and the schools in terms of guesstimating those types of things, because then both sides would be feeling the same pain.
We do work together on that.
Oh, okay. But it seemed like the town had used a different estimate for the rate increase than what the schools did.
I think Jeff answered that well. I think Jeff answered that, the article answered it well. We were told, early on in the budget process, in like the January timeframe, I think, adjust it to 8%. Well, we've been told to do that in the past, and it comes in much lower. But we moved it up, and here again, it was a chance, but they chose not to move it up to 8%. So.
Right.
And maybe some additional, our budget is in, by the end of January, we're wrapping up and sending it down to the Board of Selectmen. Maybe as that process, continues, we all could continue to collaboratively engage in additional conversations. Now, for next year, we've already put in a 12% increase. They're saying between 8 to 12% is what we're our preliminary. That's what we're hearing. Obviously, hoping on the lower end, but being the much bigger entity, that's a $477,000 increase in our ask for next year. The 12%. We'd like to drop that, back down, obviously, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So we'll see where it goes, but hopefully it comes in lower.
Yeah. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, when we're trying to thin these budgets as much as possible. I think that's part of our issue, that, there is zero fluff in these budgets and no wiggle room anymore at all. And not that there was, fluff years back, but it's so tight. One swing one way or the other is going to cause, us to either potentially have some savings, at the end of the year, or which we've always given back. We've, over the last 6 years, we've given back $1,932,565 combined over the last 6 years back to the, the town. This year, we know we're not going to have that, clearly. So,
Right.
but I think the more we can continue to communicate, as we move through that January, February timeframe, the better off we'll be. So, yeah, agreed.
Thanks.
Yeah,
But, it is a,
yeah.
Sorry.
go ahead, yep.
Hi, Eric Bauman, East Lyme Board of Ed Chair. One question for process. If we get information after we've submitted, so you've started to get information, started to go, and then we get new information that could drive costs up or down, how do you want us to communicate that to you? Like, what's the process? Because that would be helpful to know.
And that was sort of just what I was going to say too, that I feel like, you had your first budget workshop in November, and the budget finally, ends up, finalized in May. This process is just so drawn out that I can see where you feel like most of your year is taken up with doing a budget. And I know from my perspective, if we have real material information, I would think that, we have to obviously look at the calendar of the town meeting and, all of those formal aspects of it. But I would think if we had material information, we would want to, get that right up to the point where we're voting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Factor it right in.
Yeah, because if you're nailing down the budget in January and new information is coming in February and March, then, I would think we would want to take that into consideration.
Agreed, especially if this is going to be a moving target over the next
Yeah.
coming years.
Obviously within the confines of our charter and what we have to do.
Yeah, just such volatility. It was 1.25%, the prior year with health insurance, and then jumps to 10.5%. That's a huge swing, which I think if collectively moving forward, into that January, February, March timeframe would be good, so we can make adjustments as necessary with more information. So, yeah, I'll work on that information. I have that information. We'll work on putting that together and sharing that.
Yeah, and if any of my fellow Board of Finance, think of information that you'd like to see, feel free to just forward it to me and I can.
That'd be great. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again. We'll look forward to seeing a couple of you there tomorrow night, where we'll talk through these positions and the change and what we're looking at for next year.
Thank you. Anything else for Jeff?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Next, we have Mr. Gervais, our Director of Finance.
Right. Just get situated. All right. And just like that, we save 50 grand. 625 over 677. Anyway. All right. So some of these, the right direction. All right. Some of these things we've gone over the last three Board of Finance meetings I've been at, but what's a fourth? All right. So, some things we're going to talk about tonight, just real briefly. Nova time, that's starting to finish up here. We have one more week of training, and we're going right into testing and implementation of going live. We're still working on, we're coordinating with the Board of Ed, with Munis adopting and getting a project manager. Yesterday, we started rolling out the final documents for the purchase card program. We have a new update in Treasury. We're looking at FDIC insured CDs, financial statement audit update, not much going on there. Fund balance projection, fund balance policy update. I just put a placeholder in there. I didn't really get to that this month. And then we're going to talk about the two budgets, the fiscal year 23 budget and then the budget we are going into the budget season. So, like I said, Nova time still on track. IT, HR, and finance are working together to give every employee badges so they can fob into the time and attendance system, and we can get rid of carbon copy paper in town hall. Wouldn't that be nice? The Munis ERP system, like I said, we're working with the Board of Ed Finance Department to implement that across town. Looking at July 2023 for that. And purchase cards, we just talked about that, finalizing the documents, getting list of departments, employees that are going to be on our purchase card program. So, jumping into the Treasury update, I don't know if you guys saw today, the Fed raised rates one more time. And so when I was perusing Twitter at about 1:55, right before the minutes dropped at 2 o'clock, I saw this graph here. And I thought it was interesting to share because it ties into the FDIC insured CDs we're going to talk about the next slide. So as you can see, December 22 there, the Fed expected fund rate target, they're targeting 4.65, I think it is roughly, that the red dotted line across. And we can see the expected rate is going to climb to about 4.8. So that's a little less than 5%, and you can see that's right around spring, summertime coming up here, and right around July 1st, fiscal year 24's budget. How are we going to budget for interest if we're trying to hit a moving target? There's a company called Northern Capital Securities that called me, and they've been dealing with Anna for a couple years, but she never, finalized anything or pulled the trigger. So what we have here, there's an attachment that has more. This was just a little sampling. So one of the attachments I handed out, there should be something there. The only portrait one, it's got a long list of CDs. Everyone has a copy of it. So we can just go through here and take a quick look. You can see some of these go out all the way to 2029. Now, as we talk about the fund balance for the town, we don't really even the town doesn't have 2 months of working capital yet, the 16%. So we wouldn't be putting millions of dollars here. It would, it's in $250,000 increments. So maybe we would do $500,000, have 2 CDs, 4 CDs, $1 million bucks. So this is nothing crazy, and this is just kind of, we're dipping our toes in the water here. But you can look, some of these are over 5%, and that locks our money. And they're callable, some, June 2023, some of them. But really, this gives us a little more stability in our interest income. Not for all of the money, but for, some money we know we're not going to really, spend. And we can kind of do a better job of predicting what our interest income is going to be if we look to purchase some of these. So,
Evan, can you refresh my memory? So, Connecticut General Statute 7-400, which addresses the
A or B? No.
which addresses what we could invest general funds in. Now, they typically the bank had to have a branch in the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
So I'm just
So
double
I have not
checking
done
on
anything
that.
to this,
Okay.
and just for full disclosure, I have a meeting with Scott Frazier, the town treasurer, and we are talking with a finance director from, I believe it was Southington, came over from Glastonbury, and the individual I talked to, they've been doing business together for 20 years. He spoke very highly of her and said, if you have any questions, talk to her. So we have a Friday Friday morning, 9 a.m. call with her. So any questions you have, if you just want to,
Yeah, no, I just
Email
want to
me.
make sure it's consistent with,
yeah,
yeah.
state law, yeah, that'd be
And
important.
I know that, there's a couple of different programs, like Promontory Cedars program, which, has this whole,
Shoot the general statute at me one more
program.
time. What was it? CGS?
7-400.
Okay.
So it, it talks about municipalities can invest in CDs, repurchase agreements, treasuries.
Only
But
if they have
then
a-
if it's a CD, whether it's covered by FDIC insurance or not. And I know at one point they had to have a branch
In the
within
state.
the state, but I don't know whether it's changed since we've had this prevalence of these CD programs. And I think it's interesting, you see the first call date, so those are, really pointing to the idea that the market's thinking that
It's going to come down.
they're gonna come down and they will be called, so,
Yeah.
but we can't count on it, so we need to keep that in mind, because, this could be wrong, and then you end up with a CD going out to 2029,
Correct.
and that's
Yep.
not what we were looking for.
Yep. And so this will be we're not doing anything, we're just exploring this, so I would come to you for the next meeting, we would discuss it.
Okay.
And, Scott would probably come in here and we would talk about it. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, financial statement audit update. I've reached out a few times to Ron Nossick, I've yet to hear back. The state of Connecticut emailed us asking us for a status update, and I didn't see a response. So I have to give Ron a call here and see if I can get him on the horn and get an update, because as it says here, our anticipated filing date was October, and here we are in December. And don't forget, our fiscal year 22 audit is due in 2 weeks, and they haven't touched that, so we're going to have to put that on extension. And we have yet to get the fiscal year 2020 Department of Health letter, so I just keep that there, and maybe they forgot to write it. So maybe we'll get lucky and just delete that last one there, and only have 2 audits and 2 budgets. So just something to keep in mind here. We're going to have 2 financial statements open, and both on extension. So that's
And how many times have you reached out to Ron?
in the last 2 weeks I've reached out twice. So the state of Connecticut emailed both of us asking for an update. I didn't see a response. I forwarded that to Ron saying, "Hey, Ron, any update?" And then just did it again today. So I will reach back out. So just keeping you in the loop. Is there a subcommittee for audit? Or one of you audit? No subcommittee. Okay, just checking. I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Couldn't see anything in the minutes. So. All right, ongoing discussions, things we've talked about in the past, establishing a grant fund, the fund balance policy, and then, I've talked about this in the past, bringing in the additional resources. As we get close to year end and other municipalities start finishing up their financial statements, other finance directors that have free time and want to do this in their spare time, they've got some time on their hands. So we'll be talking about that because, we still have to close the books and reconcile everything for 21. 22, I'm sorry, not 21. 21's done, but just not finalized. And then the last line there, just to let you know, this is the new update on this, the temporary clerk to help with payroll. One of the clerks in the finance office is out on medical leave. And we're indefinitely, we're not sure when she's coming back. And right around the corner, we have 1099s, W-2s. She was responsible for all of that. So right now we have someone from Water and Sewer helping out in the finance office doing payroll, but now Water and Sewer is suffering, so we're affecting multiple departments. Billing for water and sewers right now, so being down in admin is really not good downstairs. So we're looking to hire a temp for the next month or so to kind of get us through W-2s, 1099s, and all that. So just keep in mind, right now the budget doesn't look too bad in the finance department, but if you throw a temp in there, that budget's not gonna be in the greatest shape. All right, and so our fund balance projection, and I wanted to discuss this briefly. I have 2. There's also a handout, so it's a little larger, so you can see that. You can see we changed, the numbers are very similar from last month. The only difference is I adjusted down interest income to $333,000 in the middle column there. We budgeted for $20,000. And then while we're here, we might as well talk about it, that $333,000. If you look at there's one more. All right, I don't know if I printed out the interest income projection one, or if it's just another slide. So I have a projection for where we're getting that $333,000. So quickly, we're looking at about $900,000 of unexpected revenues. Of that, 588, I believe it was coming from MRSA, municipal revenue sharing. We talked about. Yeah, hold on. Let me just blow through one more slide. I just want to get to where the interest income projection. A few slides down. I know it's hard to see. I thought I had it printed out. I must have left it on my desk, and I don't feel like walking all the way back there. So far this year, we have brought in $133,000 of interest income, 6.5 times the budget. I'm projecting. I did a little spreadsheet here. It's got some wonky things. I'll walk you through if you want. But I'm projecting interest income of about $350,000. Take away the $20,000 budgeted. That gives us our $333 I have in the fund balance projection here. I personally think that $333 is very, very conservative. You can see I prepared this a couple weeks ago before we got the November interest. I projected about $30,000 interest all the way to the right column. We actually got $55,000 or $54,500. So very close to $2,000 a day for the general fund and interest income. So, and then when January hits and we got all that cash coming in here, that number will skyrocket. So hopefully the Fed keeps this interest rate high for a little bit at least.
Well, of course, the offset to that is everything is
Yeah,
more
everything
expensive,
crashes.
So,
Yeah,
so,
little things.
Inflation is hitting us on
You can't
all of
win.
our expenses. So,
Moral of the story is we can't win.
yeah.
We get more revenue.
You know,
Yeah,
Debt
yeah.
service
Inflation
will
went
go
up 40%. So,
40% electricity bill.
so let me just back up here a few slides.
This year.
So like I said, all right. So
Oh,
yeah, we're in good shape with electricity and all the
24?
utilities. All right, revenue expenditures. Like I said, we're going to be up on interest, municipal revenue sharing. So we have some unexpected revenues. On the expense side, police overtime is almost 60%. So it's a little high. Conversely, police regular wages is under budget. So, and that's a much larger line. A lot of the police officers are out on medical leave, and so police officers get called in mandatory overtime. So they've already worked an 8-hour shift. They got to work another 8-hour shift to cover, and really I think a big driver of it is the sergeants. You need to have a sergeant on every shift, if I'm mistaken, First Selectman Siri?
Yeah, correct. We had at one time we had 2 sergeants out on they were injured on the job. So again, a little bit more overtime, but here again, workers' comp covers, so it's less out of salary. Same thing with the 3rd sergeant. He was out injured as well. So that's one of the things they're running under in the general salary, but a little bit over in the police officer overtime.
Yep.
Does the road assignments? they
No,
do- they do-
has
that's
nothing to
included
do,
in that?
no, we actually make a profit on
Yeah,
that
that-
because we do
that's-
charge for, cost of the vehicle and so forth like that. So town actually makes money. And that's what's used to fund the purchase of police vehicles as well. But that's not over and that has nothing to do with it. And that's nothing at all. Yeah.
So,
The telephone poles.
so
Sweet.
Kevin, in that light, there are some projects that are being done by various companies on very narrow 2-lane roads without a flagman. Are there any kind of regulations in town from the police as to that they either need to have a flagman or to hire our police officers for that? Because some of them, it's blind passing, and
I would recommend if you see that to notify the police department, because that would be a police commission and police chief decision. But I know if it's anywhere near like the main roads and that there has to be someone. There's sometimes when there might be a short-term one too, but that would be a question best research, and I can reach out to the chief, so I'll have an answer for you for next month for that.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay, thanks.
And send me an email to remind me so I don't forget.
Okay.
I just wanted to, if you could talk a little bit more about the overtime at 59% and the 39% regular office, what, the offset for that, is that?
So there's no offset for that. The reason why one is over so much and one is under, there's a few sergeants that are out on medical leave. So in order to backfill that position,
Right.
they don't come in for regular time because they're already working a shift. They come in at overtime, so
Right.
time and a half. So
I
that's why
understand-
the overtime line
I
is.
understand that, but what's the net result?
Oh, net result.
Is that we're spending more money?
We are. Put it in here. When I did a quick little cursory look at it, I thought we were going to be all right and under budget because we're talking, the overtime line's 300,000,
Yeah.
and the salary wages line is 2.5 million.
2.77, yeah.
What page?
I'm on page 18.
There we go. So you know what? I didn't do a detailed analysis on this, but I can just project it out and based on the current usage rates every week, and we'll see what the overage is and what the under is, and make sure it's covered.
I just think the police overtime is a vulnerable spot for
Yep.
us.
Okay. So I'll look into that for next meeting.
Thank you.
Perfect. Anything else anyone wants me to dig into as far as on the expenses side? On the town side? Okay. All right, I still have one or two more slides. Let's keep this organized here. All right, so we already talked about, Marissa, we talked about the interest income, and I'm not sure if you have a worksheet there for this, or you're just gonna have to look at this, but I can always send you one for the interest income. And I will update this. This is at 383. Today it's at 408, and I'm sure tomorrow it'll be 4 1/4. So that's looking good. Budget outlook 2024. All right. So I just wanted to keep in everyone's mind what our thoughts are, how we're going to handle all these, a lot of my questions here are on the revenue side. The tax collection rate. Are we going to use historical 5-year look back? Are we going to take some off of that? Because if we're in a recession, the collection rate does drop. So we can't put a 5-year average in. That'll have a severe impact on the budget. So these are some things we need to talk about. Are we looking at a recessionary outlook? Are we going to, calculate a stay the course, steady ahead? I call it Sally, same as last year. Like I said, collection rates fluctuate depending on the economic outlook. Economic slowdown affects, like the tax collector's conveyance fees on houses that are selling, building permits. Are they able to put a new back deck on the house? So there's a lot of questions here. Interest income, we just talked about. When you look at those callable, they're expecting the rates to come down. So how do we budget for that? We want to make sure we have the revenue to come in next year, because it's one thing to overexpend, it's one thing not to have the cash. So and like I said, just talking to different departments, inflationary pressures are really gonna be a challenge this year. Everything's up. Nothing's up 3, 4, 5%. Everything's up 25%. If you sat in a water and sewer meeting, the chemicals are up, 50%, Kev?
Not quite, about 33%.
Yeah. So, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's, big economic impact. So, just something to keep our eyes out on. All right. Last slide. Sorry to keep you here all night. ARPA. I broke down every ARPA project, just to give you a little status update of where we stand. This is just the closed out ones, so I couldn't fit the whole thing there. It'd look like little little writing. So this is strictly, on this slide, I put the closed ones. On the paper you have in front of you, you have the entire list, and you can see down at the bottom, our money to allocate new projects is $58,000. As we close out projects, there's money that rolls back into that fund balance in that fund. So,
If I could interject something on ARP, one of the things we thought, because we have offered to hire people from the school to do the hybrid meetings and that, we thought, at least for the test period, it would be probably not a bad idea to, that was what ARP money was almost designed for, so Board of Selectmen are gonna have to discuss maybe that's how to use some money too. And it wouldn't be that much, we're talking about $4,000 or $5,000.
any questions?
Comprehensive, as always.
If you have any questions, you can always email me or stop in.
You have to stop in now, because all week if I want to talk to him, I have to walk to him, because
Hobbling around.
coming down the hall.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is new business. The first one is a special appropriation. This is coming to us from Chief Finkelstein, the Emergency Management Director. If you recall, back at our September 14th meeting, we approved a appropriation of the NSCF grant for EOC equipment of $25,948.80. There were remaining funds that still were available, and they were waiting for the items to be purchased. So, so this is the second half and the final special appropriation request for this 2023 equipment. It's a dispatch laptop with the install, setup software, and card printer. So I think everybody was familiar when I believe it was Julie that presented to us last time.
Yes.
I don't know, Mr. Sterry, if you
No,
have
I
anything
think
more
this
to add
covers
to
it.
that.
No,
It's-
this is one of the things we're hoping to not have to do this with,
Right.
once we get through a charter revision, if it's approved, and that this is just the remainder of the yearly nuclear safety emergency fund balance, so. And I told Julie and the chief that I didn't think there was need for them to come tonight.
Mhm. All right, do I have a motion?
Move to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $19,176.20 to cover the cost of purchasing the above listed equipment for the EOC. Note, this requires a town meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion, any questions, concerns? No, if not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion carries 500. Next, under new business, is a special appropriation from the probate court. And we have the memo from Jeffrey McNamara, probate judge. I don't know, Mr. Sherry, whether you wanted to say anything in regard to this?
I just,
Present it.
this is, I think we said, it's split up 4 ways, and our percent of that is 42%. It's based on the 2020 census and so forth, like, it says right there. And, you know, their budget year is a little different than ours for the probate, so this is how they've done it. They've come and made a request. We do have ample funds, and I did mention we're gonna be hiring a building official, but largely there's a lot of money left in that, so that'd be a good location for it. They did indicate for next year, they'd like to, they have never, they want to expend some money for furniture and some other things like that. And I talked to the judge, and he said he had no problem waiting for all the 4 towns' budget cycle to basically incorporate that rather than the special appropriation, so they're fine with that. So this is the only thing we're addressing now.
Have a motion?
Okay, move to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $420.39 from account 01-01-104-100-212, building official salary,
to account 0101111150-295.
Do I have a second?
Also,
Okay. Is there any discussion, any questions? If not, all those in favor of the special appropriation of $420.39, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion
This would be a
carries.
nice exhibit for the charter revision.
Yeah, I know. Great. Motion carries. Just unfinished business that we are keeping on our agenda just so that it doesn't fall off and we don't realize, where it went to. So I believe Mr. Gervais already discussed where we are with the audited financial statements. We also are still out there with our possible amendment of the fund balance policy. I know we kind of have gone back and forth with, should it be a range? What do we want the top of the range to be? I think we're also somewhat concerned with where we put it and what potential impact there may be, with the Board of Ed deficit. So I think we want to make sure that we don't go out there with something that we might be breaching immediately. I don't know whether you've had any more discussions on what you think would be appropriate at this point.
So I've earlier this week I was doing some research on GASB 54 and the change in verbiage of the fund balance policies. So I read Colchester's. I read a few different towns, and everyone's very unique. And then some other towns, they take the opportunity to once they're adopting a new rule, they piggyback all these different rules on there. So I was really everyone I read, I had more questions than answers. And there was some I thought were really interesting that said, all right, any undesignated fund, any monies left over at the end of the year, half of it would go into the undesignated fund balance, half of it would go into a non-lapsing fund. So there's so many. I mean, this is a very, it could get very complex. So I don't know how complex we wanted it. Or we just want a very basic, couple sentences. The town's fund balance policy is setting a threshold of minimum of this, maximum of this. But then there was talks in some of them about how, if it fell below that, how do they budget for a profit, right? To replenish the fund balance. So there was a lot of research involved there. So
I think at the very least, I think it would be good to incorporate just the language from GASB 54 into the different definitions of the different ways you can calculate the undesignated fund balance and all of that. So just we want to make sure we reference the most updated guidance there, I think.
And was there also is there a draft fund balance policy already, like an actual one that we're working on, or was it just because I haven't found maybe I can find in Anna's archives. But I've just been I've found all the towns surrounding us.
I have one.
You have one that you
the
like?
draft that we've been working on. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get that.
That'd be great.
All right. Okay. Next is public discussion. We have no public. Last, we have board comments. Do we go ahead, Richard?
Yeah, I am very happy to hear the success of the Light Parade. I was volunteering at Karen Share today, helping to weigh and distribute the food materials that were donated from the Light Parade. It was over 200 pounds that came from that. I thought that was pretty great, and then somebody said to me, "Oh, well, we've always been like over 1,000." I was like, "Oh, okay." But at any rate, that was a great success. Also, this weekend, a recipient of our ARPA funds, Eastern Connecticut Ballet School, had their performances of the Nutcracker down at the Guard.
Oh, that's right.
And they had their highest ticket sales of any years that they've performed there. What was noted was that the Saturday night performance, the ticket sales dropped
Because everybody was here.
because of the light parade. So I think it would behoove the community if there was some way where things could be coordinated a little bit better so people don't have to choose between one activity and another.
We've always, I mean, it's
Yeah.
been forever that it's the second Saturday in December.
Oh, okay.
And I think that the amount of people that would have to rearrange their schedules too, because now they're, same thing with our farmers market. They said, oh, can we switch the dates? Well, no, a lot of them have other events. There are other light parades right now that would impact that ability. So,
Right.
I mean, ours has always existed. To ask them to try and move that would be, to earlier would be too close to Thanksgiving, and any later you're tempting Mother Nature.
Right.
I guess that's a good problem to have, that we
Yeah,
have too
it's
many
a good
exciting
problem,
events to go
and
to.
I just wanted to raise that issue up so that all of our community can benefit. One nice thing about Eastern Connecticut Ballet was on the poster boards at the Guard, as part of their sponsors, they gave credit to East Lyme, and I talked to Lisa Reardon about that, and that was primarily due to receipt of the ARPA funds that we were noted as a sponsor. So I thought that was pretty nice. And then one other item in my mind is the newspaper article regarding George Mitchell, or the Mitchell family's movie theater and the defunct police station, and Nyack Main Street and the ARPA funding for the Yale study. I remembered from our ARPA subcommittee that I believe Nyack Main Street was also supposed to be focusing on Flanders, and I'd like to ensure that that still occurs.
Oh, no,
with that ARPA money.
that is part of things, because when I met with them, they were talking, they were actually, they were extending the circle around Main Street. They're looking at that as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just that it seems as of recent years that some of the development along Post Road has kind of gone a little bit haphazardly, to be kind. Other than that, I hats off to the community for supporting all the nonprofits that we do, and for supporting activities like the Light Parade.
All set. Anyone else? Well, I would just say I wish everybody a happy and healthy holiday season, and look forward to budgeting in the new year.
I say looking forward to it. Ready to meet the challenge of budgeting in the new year might be the better way to put it.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motions, we are adjourned.